All right, so we're a little bit after 2, so let's go ahead and begin today. So thank you all today for joining us for OpenSSH Key Management and Control. This is an ongoing webinar series that we're running here at SSH, helping people who are using the Secure Shell protocol and other data in transit solutions really use best practices and improve their security, compliance, and as well as saving time and building efficiencies into their environment. I'm Jason Thompson, the Director of Global Marketing for SSH Communications Security. Been at the security business for quite a while now. SSH, as you probably know, is the inventors of the SSH protocol. We are fairly well regarded as experts in the space, so hopefully this will help you in your understanding of your environment and also give you some pathways to better security going forward. Let's just briefly cover what we will be covering today, just to give you an idea of what the webinar is going to be about. First, I'll just touch a little bit about what SSH communication security is. Then I'll go into our current state of security. We want to have a discussion about perimeter security, network access controls, encrypted channel auditing, data loss prevention, and then I'm going to provide you with a real-world example of a customer of ours implementing key management on an open SSH environment. Our solution also, just to be clear, also works with our own proprietary SSH Tectia client server solution as well as mainframe solution as well, but also the open SSH architecture as well. After that, we'll cover a little bit on business drivers, external threats, internal threats, cost and compliance issues. And then we'll touch on, and we've been kind of talking about this, of how to establish a zero trust model in your open SSH environment. We'll include a brief self-assessment. Of course, our sales and sales engineering team can help you do a more detailed use case self-assessment, as well as we'll provide you with best practices for key management, also known as access controls. In addition to that, I'll also show a little bit of our auditing and DLP forensic solution as well, so you can kind of see how those two pieces fit together within our platform. So a little bit about SSH communication security. As I said before, we are the inventors of the SSH protocol. It's one of the most widely used protocols in the world, with literally millions of deployments across the globe. And this is used in organizations large and small, enterprise scale to mid-size, and across almost every vertical you can imagine. To show you that within our own customer base, we have 3,000 customers worldwide, including 7 of the Fortune 10, and I believe about 40% of the Fortune 100. I think we're seeing both screens. Hang on one second. Let's see, that should fix the screen issue. Let me check. Hang on one second. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I've got my my second monitor showing here. So let's continue on. Some of our customers include energy and utilities companies, including ExxonMobil, First Energy, Agro Sisu Power, government sector, a huge space for us, across NASA, DISA, United States courts, you name it. If it's a government agency, we're pretty much in there. Financial, obviously this is a huge sector for us, especially with SOX compliance and PCI compliance. Some of the largest banks in the world, including a new customer we just signed 2 weeks ago, one of the largest top 10 financial institutions in the world, and that's open SSH environment as well. Also the retail sector, obviously here with PCI compliance, as well as healthcare. So we're looking at PCI to a point, and also HIPAA and other requirements as well. So about our information assurance platform. So beginning in September 2011, we shifted our approach to going from a more tactical company focusing on client-server technology to building into that the actual ability to better manage the secure shell environments that you're using. And to do that, we came up with the concept, which is now in full implementation, of the information assurance platform. And effectively, the entire platform, we won't cover all parts of it today, but it covers the core of what you do with your SSH environment, your configuration management, your host key management, your deployment management, user key management, access controls, auditing, automation, and authentication. This is really the core of what you're doing with your secure shell environment. With a tactical solution, you find this with OpenSSH, there's no unified centralized management controls. We're effectively applying a minimally invasive solution, minimally invasive platform that will give you the ability to interoperate seamlessly with your existing OpenSSH environment. And this is going to help you reduce costs, eliminate risk, and drive compliancy. And because it's so highly interoperable and minimally invasive, basically you're just going to be able to lay this on top of your environment and have instant visibility into your overall environment. You're going to have the controls over configurations. You're going to have the controls over host key management. These are all major time-consuming tasks. They also have security risks involved with it. It's also an audit issue as well. Today we're going to cover user key management, access controls, and a little bit of auditing as well, just to give you an idea of our new product, Crypto Auditor. So let's first talk about, let's kind of like lay the groundwork a little bit about sort of the current state of security. And as if you've been reading up on the concept of a zero trust environment, you kind of learn about how the security model is going from building sort of a fortress around our organization to realizing that the perimeter, especially in an extended enterprise world, isn't necessarily impenetrable. We know from attacks such as the one that hit RSA, even security companies can get hit with a spear phishing attack or advanced persistent threat, get into the company behind the perimeter, and then crawl around the networks for a while and start to exploit information from the networks. Those external threats are, and that landscape is increasing significantly. We're seeing those obviously in Eastern Europe, China, parts of Asia, Russia, where you have criminal organizations, individual hackers, and in some cases you might have some type of freedom-fighting group, or at least that's what they think they are, going and attacking corporate entities. And these threats are increasing, and the threat vectors that they're using are more and more sophisticated. And we know that the perimeter is the potential for breach is there because we know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of endpoints, maybe hundreds of thousands of endpoints in your organization, and each one could be a potential way into the overall network. And of course, that makes, especially in a BYOD environment, in an extended enterprise environment, that becomes more and more significant. In addition to that, when we're talking to a lot of people, especially when I just came back from the PCI conference down in Orlando, we're talking a lot of the concern is around malicious insiders, the threats that they propose. Mainly because, especially if it's an admin inside of the organization, and I know we never like to think of our own employees as being malicious, but we know that even one employee out of several thousand who works for us and is a malicious character, they're operating behind our perimeter, so they have access behind the perimeter as it is. And they may have, in fact, access beyond that, access to critical information systems, access to critical information assets in the organization, and have the means to carry out an exploit potentially without anyone knowing. At least in the current state, especially using secure shell, the administrators that use that are our most trusted administrators, but even one bad one can actually use the encrypted environment to create quite a problem for us. Especially, again, as I said, it's difficult in the BYOD, cloud, and extended enterprise environments to keep the perimeter completely secure. So we know, and we can say we can't build fortress, corporation X. We can't do that. But what we can do is say we not trust anything internally inside the environment. One of the biggest areas where there's a critical lapse of security controls is in key management. So if we look at secure shell or any of the encrypted methods for transmitting data, especially in the data in transit space versus data at rest, what we find is that we've gone into many customers are using OpenSSH and saying, let's look at your environment and see what's going on inside of your environment. And the current state is they're really unable to account for users. They don't really know who has access to what information in their environments. They really don't have any centralized control over key creation whatsoever. That means they're not able to also unable to identify trust relationships in the environment. That means basically matching key pairs. It's giving you access between the client and server. In addition to that, oftentimes from the standpoint of business continuity, folks don't know exactly which keys are allowing which operations to occur in the first place. So that also creates a business continuity issue as well as a security risk, because you don't know if you remove that key what's going to happen. And the result of that is a lack of key removal and rotation. So despite the fact that realistically security best practices say you need to remove keys and users that are no longer at the organization, keys that are no longer in use, and also rotate those keys periodically. So as we know, the longer a key is out there, the greater the risk is that that key will be compromised. So these best practices of removal and rotation just aren't possible, let alone the centralized creation of these keys. So along with that, there's the cost, there's the risk, there's the compliance issues that are going along with that. In addition to that, you can't standardize on key size, type, or strength easily. It's a very manual process. If it's a large organization with, say, 10,000 hosts, you might have 5 to 7 people just creating keys and managing that process themselves. And hopefully they don't make a mistake, but there's no way to really enforce that since it's very manual. And if we were to look at sort of the state of brute force attacks against SSH according to IBM X-Force 2011 Trend and Risk Report, you see a sharp rise in SSH brute force attacks in the later half of 2011. And that's mainly because people are now realizing that, of course, if you're going to rob, if you want money and you're a robber, the best place to go is a bank. Well, if you want information and you're a hacker, one of the best places to go is to your encrypted networks, because that's where you're keeping all of your most critical assets and information. And if you can get in that network and you can get access to it, maybe through a weak key or password, that's going to give you the ability to compromise some of the most trusted assets in an organization. So as we can see this, we can analytically say, yes, this isn't something we just think is happening. We actually know that it's happening. We know that SSH is becoming, or Secure Shell is becoming a bigger target, as has SSL and other environments as well. So let's also take a look, too, at the current state of encrypted channel auditing. So when we're talking about key management, we also need to talk a little bit of, key management sort of controls what goes through the front door, but we also have to have an extra layer of protection. And that is what's leaving the organization, what's leaving the server, what's going out through the door. In the current state of encrypted channel auditing, and I hear this all the time, where security ops and forensics teams, they feel like they're blinded by encryption. And in some cases, they're saying, well, on the one hand, we have a compliance requirement to eliminate FTP, or things passing in clear text on our environment. On the other hand, our security ops and forensics teams tell us that once we encrypt that information, they're blinded to it, so they can't do any remediation. They can't do any post-exploit discovery. They don't have the ability to know which user was compromised or which insider engaged in malicious activities. They're blind to what information was taken, so they don't always know the depth of the breach. And they're often blind to where the information was taken from or to. So obviously, while the encrypted networks are very important to the organization to eliminate passing information in clear text, especially things like credit card information, personally identifiable information, healthcare records, it also can be used against you to blind your organization. In addition to that, not just being able to see what is transmitted on your encrypted networks, but also be able to apply data loss prevention. So one of the big issues with encrypted networks right now is that most folks say, well, it's great if we can monitor it and so forth, but how do we prevent the information from getting lost or being exploited in the first place? And right now, you're probably unable to prevent in your networks data loss on your encrypted networks. You're probably unable to monitor and inspect the content transmitted across your networks, and it's not integrated into your security intelligence architecture, such as your SIEM, your DLP, or IDS. Basically, even if you have a SIEM, DLP, or IDS, and you're not able to inspect that traffic, those are not really great tools for you to be able to use to be able to get into those deep content and packet inspections to see what's really going on, what's passing across the network. Now, to give you a real-world example of a customer that we're working with, and what sort of we found during the discovery process and what we're doing for them. This is a global 1,000 diversified company, so a very large organization with over 10,000 servers in their network. 1.5 million keys were identified during the discovery phase, but believe it or not, 10% or 150,000 keys were unknown and also had root access. And they had no ability to monitor their encrypted traffic either on their network. So the result of this was a failed audit, because this was a SOX audit failure. And basically, auditors coming in and saying, you know, part of the requirement is that you're going to be able to account for who has access to what information in your environment. And realistically, when you have 10% of your keys, or 150,000 keys unknown to your IT directors and security ops folks, and they also have root access, that's a huge security risk. So the auditor, of course, wrote that up, and they immediately had to go and find a solution. Fortunately, we were able to provide that solution for them and solve the problem for them, and we'll get into that a little bit later as we get into what the crypto auditor and key management solution that we offer can do for you. From a business standpoint, let's look a little bit about what we talked a little bit earlier about what the external threat vector is. Let's take a look a little bit about what that looks like from the standpoint of an attacker that breaches the perimeter. The attacker acquires keys, and the attacker accesses the servers. And obviously, because they're using the encrypted network, the attackers will be able to extract those information assets through the encrypted tunnel, and quite possibly without you even knowing, and knowing who did it, what information was taken, you have an exploit on your hands. The same thing is true with an internal threat. So even though this person didn't breach the perimeter, they're permitted behind the perimeter, they're a malicious insider and they access servers with authorized keys. So now this person has a key, they're supposed to have the key, and they're supposed to have access to the information assets, but because you can't monitor your network, this person's also going to be able to take information assets out of the organization through the encrypted tunnel. And it may be very difficult to investigate that, even to know if you've been breached or not. So it's a huge risk, both from an external and internal threat standpoint. As we look at the business driver for compliance, we're talking about PCI DSS, and we've gone to the conference now in Orlando, the North American Community Meeting. We're going to be going to the Dublin Community Meeting as well. There's actually 5 separate new items on the agenda for PCI to add, specifically related to key management. And that's going to be a big piece of the next round of PCI, we think, as we've been in talks with PCI as well, to actually apply the requirements for centralized management and creation, enforcing key algorithm, the strengths, the types, the ability to rotate and delete keys, because clearly, as you can see from the example that I gave you before, the real-world case example of a top Global 1000 company, this is a problem across the board because there isn't a strong security solution out there, it wasn't until now, that could help actually to manage this process if you're using the gold standard secure shell data and transit solutions in your environment. In addition to that, you've got other compliance mandates such as COVID, IT governance framework, SOX, as I said before, is a big driver. ISO, HIPAA, FISMA, other government national security policies such as NIST. These all are requirements as well, so it's pretty much across the board. And I think from what we're sort of hearing out in the space as we talk about the need for access controls, we talk to the analysts out there, this is definitely the hot button issue, is to be able to control access to your networks and also areas on your network. These compliance drivers are coming into place fairly quickly, and I think I talked with about 80 to 85 people out of the show, probably about 2,500 down in Orlando, and each one had an open project. Some cases have been open for quite some time because they didn't have a solution where they needed to have a solution for this because of an audit or compliance issue, or that they were anticipating that there was going to be a need for this. And we always like to think, too, that people are actually looking for actual security solutions, not just compliance solutions. Fortunately, we deliver both, so either way you're looking at it. So let's look a little bit at cost. So we've actually done an economic study with one of our large customers, and we were looking at the costs to actually manage your SSH secure shell keys. So in most cases, you've got a 6-step process to manage your keys, and it's all manual. You've got your key request, your approval process, your key pair creation, you've got your transfer of keys, your configuration, and you've got your testing. So we went through and we looked at the entire organization very holistically and said, all right, what is going on inside the environment that allows you to just create keys? We're not talking about removal and rotation. We're just saying, what are the costs associated with you on an annual basis to just create keys? And as you can see from here, this is a 20,000 SSH system environment, secure shell system environment. The number of new key setups is about 10,000, average time per setup 15 minutes. Average number of systems per setup 10, number of key removal operations per server 2. Time required 30 minutes. As you get to the bottom of that, you see the estimated operational cost per year. For a 20,000 host environment, after you accounted for time, labor, et cetera, it was about $4 million per year. So over a 10-year period, you're talking about $40 million. Clearly, that's a cost that doesn't need to occur, at least in that large amount. And fortunately, we're able to provide a solution that will allow you to reduce the operating expense by 80 to 85%. Because you're going to have centralized management, and instead of having to do things through a manual process, you're going to have the ability to do that through a centralized single pane of glass solution. So let's look a little bit, as we've talked about costs, we've talked about how much the cost is. Let's look at a self-assessment. These are questions you can ask yourself about your environment. This is the right product for you. Is this something that you come across? And these are things that I ask people as I meet them at shows and other security events. Just simple, basic questions that if you ask yourself, sometimes if you say no to these, you think, my gosh, we can't do this. Do you know which users have access to what information assets on your encrypted networks? Do you really know if a user that has been terminated maybe a decade ago still has access to your environment? We actually can help you with the discovery process on that to actually review your environment to actually get a handle of this. A lot of times people will say to us, no, we think we have a pretty good control over it. Then we go into the environment and they say, my God, like the example that I gave you before, we've got 10% of our keys are unknown. They have hundreds of users on there that were no longer at the company as well. And some of those users and keys have root access capabilities. So that's obviously a huge risk. In addition to that, we talked a little bit before about identifying trust relationships and why that's important both from a security standpoint, because that's going to give you access, obviously, to the information assets in your environment. But also we're looking at those trust relationships from the standpoint of business continuity. If you delete a key, what happens? If that key, does your entire business shut down for 2 days until you can figure out what business operation was stopped because you removed that key? So this is going to give you the ability to actually go into the environment and actually look for those trust relationships and know what they do. It gives you a very strong mapping capability. From the standpoint of access controls as well, are your key creation procedures centralized and controlled? Do you have centralized monitoring capabilities? Do you have centralized control? Can you set up privileges and so forth in your environment from a centralized location? Also, can you report on that and can you show that to an auditor? Do you remove your keys or do you rotate your keys? We've talked about that a little bit already. Do you have the ability to remove or rotate your keys? Obviously, most companies, I think, don't do this. We find that most people don't do this because they don't know what their keys do. And rotating keys is just impossible for them because it needs to be automated in order to scale in an enterprise environment. And of course, can you provide a compliance report to an auditor? Can you show that all of your information assets on your secure shell environment are out of control? And that's becoming a big issue as well because obviously if you're having to spend hundreds of hours and a lot of man time going around to different individual systems or data silos and SSH data silos in your organization trying to audit them, that's a huge task. Also from the self-assessment side of the presentation, let's look at auditing and DLP as well. So with keys, we're able to control the information assets and who has access to them. But we also want to make sure that if someone does gain access to it, whether it's because somehow there is a compromised key, or if there's an external or an internal bad actor, that we're able to audit traffic on our encrypted networks. A quick, simple question: can you audit traffic on your encrypted networks? Can you inspect the contents of the traffic on your encrypted networks? Can you actually see what information is being taken out? Can you capture any information about where that information came from and where its destination is, where it's going to? And are you able to do deep forensics on your traffic on your encrypted networks? And can you enable DLP on your encrypted network? So these are very big pieces. Are you able to see what's going on inside your encrypted networks? Can you, if there was an event, or even if you might be able to prevent the event, but if there is an event, can you give your security ops team, your forensics team, the information in a secure vault environment, so obviously that information doesn't become at risk as well, so that they can review that information and actually see, is there something, was there something that happened with this particular administrator? So let's go into a little bit of, we've talked about the problems, we've talked about the self-assessment, we've talked about the current state of the IT security as we see it from the secure shell standpoint as well as perimeter security. We talked a little bit about zero trust environments. We've thrown a lot of handy problems at you. Probably many of these you're already aware of. Probably many of you are on the webinar today because there's been an audit or a compliance issue. Some are probably also concerned about your actual security profile as well. And I like to provide in these webinars the ability to come out of here with some very actionable things that you can do, in many cases with our help, of course, to harden your secure shell environment with the information assurance platform. So here's 6 best practices. Let's start with a little bit of overview on the key management. So first we want to bring your key management or keys under control. So basically that comes down to 3 processes. The ability to discover your environment, discover existing legacy keys and trust relationships in the environment. If you've been using Secure Shell for 10 years, if you've been using OpenSSH for 10 years, you've got 10 years of an unmanaged system. So you can think how to level this out, how to level your environment so that you get to a good spot where you can start moving forward. The discovery process is a huge process for everybody to go through, but it's something that we can do because we can do this in an automated fashion. We can also do it agentless. And that's going to give you the ability to really do this in a very quick fashion compared to doing something much more manual. In addition to that, number 2, automate. So you're going to automate the creation and removal of keys, trust relationships, we talked about that. And also number 3, automatically rotate the keys as well. So let's share a little bit of detail on this. Best practice number 1. So really important here, talking about centralized SSH key management. In your environment right now, I would guarantee you've got something called data silos, secure shell data silos, where you've got individual administrators, individual units within the organization, all with the permissions and ability to add keys to various servers on their environment. There is no centralized management for that. So if you go to whoever it is in your organization is responsible for this and say, they ask you the question, can you report on who has access to what information in the environment? Obviously, it's very difficult to do. And you want to be able to provide that as well, both for the person who's managing the access controls and both creating the keys from a centralized place, but you also want to provide centralized reporting as well. So that's what we call a single pane of glass approach, using a single centralized dashboard. You also want to be able to integrate that into your existing security operations infrastructure. So if you're using a SIEM log management system or some other type of ticketing system as well for key creation, you want to be able to automate that process as well so that you can get the alerts and you can tune your environment so that you're able to use your existing infrastructure and not have to use another point solution. With our APIs, you have the ability to either use your own system or you can use our own or SSH Key Manager's UI. And also, we want to make sure we can integrate that into our LDAP and our user control system so we have better automation. And this will provide for you in your secure shell environment single sign-on, including information that's that you're monitoring as well, so there wouldn't be an extra additional step to sign on in your environment. This, of course, eliminates a lot of overhead in the environment as well as management frustrations. Best practice number 2, let's talk about understanding your environment. We talked about this a little bit. Let's go to a little bit more detail. Here you can see a screenshot of what the Universal SSH Key Manager looks like. We want to be able to automatically collect private and public user key information. And we also want to be able to automatically collect authorized user information. So we talked a lot about understanding your environment, understanding which users are in your environment. And as we do these discoveries with companies over and over again, as I said, we find that there are users who have access to information assets who are no longer at the company. And this is a big shock to folks, because they're like, who's this Ted guy from 2002 that still has access to our credit card information? Well, fortunately, Ted was a good guy and he didn't break into the environment, get behind the perimeter and breach the environment. More importantly, probably, and more likely, no one got into the environment and found a spare key on someone's hard drive somewhere and figured out where it went to and accessed their environment. So really understanding your environment, understanding the users, and understanding the private and public keys is really critical for your overall security, compliance, and overall risk for controlling risk for your organization. Best practice number 3, you want the ability to identify trust relationships in your environment. So that's when we talked before, and this gives you a little bit of a screenshot here of exactly what that identification looks like. It gives you the ability to see the private key, drill down into that, see the users, and see what access is available inside of the environment to that relationship. And that's going to give you the ability to know who has access to what information on your overall network. Best practice number 4, control key deployments. So you want to be in full control of who can add keys to your environments for obvious reasons. We talked a little bit about controlling the size and type of your keys. Also, if you have so many people in your environment with the ability to create keys, they're also setting up servers, they're configuring the servers in all probability. You've got a huge decentralized mess and a security problem as well as a compliance issue all with that. So with a centralized solution from SSH, or Universal SSH Key Manager, you're actually going to be able to add all of those authorizations and be in full control through a centralized solution. This can really take you down to, in an environment of say like 10,000 hosts, you maybe have like 1 or 2 admins, maybe 3 or 4 admins if you want a backup, who are going to be able to manage all of the key deployments from a centralized remote location in the environment. So you don't have to have people all over the place creating keys, and also you're not going to have the backlog that you commonly find when you say, hey, this new employee or this person needs access to this server on the network. Okay, that's fine, we'll get it to you in a week or 2 when we get time to do it. There's a backlog. Obviously, we also want to be able to remove the keys. We've talked about this. It's important to know which users are in the systems. We want to remove those guys if they're not already in the environment. We want single sign-on capabilities where that's possible. And we also want to be able to remove the keys from the environment so that there aren't keys, either orphan keys hanging out there so no one knows what they're doing, or keys that user just should no longer have access to that information assets. And this can happen also too with people who've moved to different units within an organization. Obviously, if someone's working in one group and they move, most of the time they don't have their keys taken away from that area that they're no longer working, and they don't need to have access to that information, so it just creates another security potential. And of course, we're going to give you the ability to rotate keys to ensure compliance and enhance security as well. And that's going to be a big key as well. Just a key to the keys is to rotate those as frequently as necessary to make sure that they're not hanging out there for, in some cases, I guess now, you probably have keys that have been out there for 10 years or more. And obviously, that's a significant risk because that's 10 years someone gets to try to exploit a key. Best practice number 5, and here we're talking a little bit about crypto auditor. So we want to talk about the ability to monitor, actually this one's going to be still in Key Manager, sorry. We're going to talk a little bit about monitoring and full account auditability within the key management environment. So you're going to have the ability to monitor date, time, admin, host name, category, event, and all the details. You can drill down into this very, very far to see exactly what's going on inside your environment. So you've got a full audit trail. This is also what you can tune into into your existing security intelligence architecture, such as your SIEM log management system. The full real-time alerts is the type of information that you would want as well. In addition to that, you've got the full audit controls, which you can see at the slide to the right lower end. That's going to give you the full ability of what's been updated and all the job summaries and tasks that are going on inside the environment. Best practice number 6, this one is Crypto Auditor. So here we want to talk about stopping data loss. So Crypto Auditor, and this is a really exciting product for us. It's gotten a lot of media attention. It's the first inline on-the-fly and invisible secure shell DLP and audit solution. Essentially, this works with Key Manager from the standpoint of if you can gain access to the keys and you can control and manage your keys through a centralized location, at that point you can then draw an imprint of those keys and pull them into our Crypto Auditor. In this case, in the diagram down here, you can see the hound, and this is the inline function of the solution. Basically, it's going to sit within your network. It's going to pull the keys in there, and as information passes through the network, you're going to automatically be able to decrypt that information and read it, apply DLP, and stop data loss, and at least have the ability to monitor that. The nice thing about it applies no changes to the user experience. No need to operate through clunky and cumbersome bastion servers that are oftentimes very expensive. And this is a very centralized solution, so It can all be managed through a distributed environment. You don't have to have separate point solutions all throughout your environment. You can actually roll this up into a complete distributed approach. And just to give you a little better idea of how the Crypto Auditor solution works, it's basically, I describe it to folks as a friendly man in the middle if they're unclear of exactly what I'm talking about. And if you follow from the lower left-hand side across, you can see the inbound encrypted traffic running through the SSH tunnel. In this case, it hits an inspection recording zone once it comes to the Hound. That's, as I said, where the key importation, decryption, re-encryption, and the ability to stop traffic or relay it onto the destination occurs. Again, this is going to be completely invisible to any of your administrators using the secure shell. What this is going to do for you is give you the ability to extend your policy controls with your SEM and DLP solution. Obviously, if you want to say this looks like a 16-digit credit card number running through your encrypted networks, it's already exited the endpoint, it's in the encrypted tunnel, invisible to the person, potentially the perpetrator, trying to get credit card information or something else outside of the organization. You could apply DLP for the first time to your encrypted traffic in your secure shell environment, stop that exploit before it actually occurs, and also you're going to be able to pull deep forensics through our Crypto Auditor Vault, which will give you full deep audit capabilities. So basically the ability to, you're basically going to record a screen session and basically hit play, and you're going to be able to search and find exactly what it is that you're looking for inside the environment that went wrong. And then finally, I want to touch a little bit too on a new service that we're providing as well. So as we've developed the product and solution, it's very turnkey. A lot of customers are able to simply plug it into their environment, go with some manuals and training and so forth, and it's fairly self-evident how this works. But in some of the larger environments, there's a huge environment with many hosts, sometimes up to 100,000 servers. You can get into huge environments. Really, we offer services as well that applies, does key discovery for the SSH keys. We can do deployment and configuration of the SSH keys. Services that does integration of the key management systems to enterprise ticketing, change control, and approval systems, as well as we can work with your SEM and DLP providers as well. We can also do automation of key removal. We can do ongoing services for you, as well as remediation of key compliance problems. So really that comes down to full SSH key management services that are going to give you the ability to really jumpstart your project. If you've got 10 years worth of keys laying around, or you're really worried about encrypted traffic and you want to get that up and running as quickly as possible to be able to review that traffic, our IAP services are going to be able to provide a real jumpstart for you with probably the most experienced R&D and technical staff in the world involving OpenSSH and secure shell environment. After all, I always enjoy telling these people the founder and CEO of our company is the inventor of the SSH protocol. So we're in pretty good hands as far as understanding how the environment works and how to make your environment more compliant, cost-effective, and ultimately more secure as well. So that's the end of the presentation. If anyone has any questions and answers, or questions, you might have answers too. If you have questions for me, let me know. Now's the time. There's a little chat window in the bottom, and I can try to respond to you. If I can't respond to you, I will let you know, and I will actually send this over to R&D if you have any questions, and they can answer any technical questions. Ideally, at this point, as you've now seen the solution, you can kind of see what we can do for you. I'd like, if you email sales@ssh.com or email me at jason.thompson@ssh.com, we can actually set up a customized demo for your particular vertical or situation. We do have generic demos online if you want to view those as well, and you can get an idea of what the product does from a sort of non-customized approach. But what we find is that every use case is different, and a lot of the questions that come across are, how do we get this started? We see the technology. We've got validation from several major organizations now, and POC or actual implementation of the solution, and people now are saying, how do we get started? And the best way to do that is to really to contact us, contact me directly, contact sales@ssh.com. You can call us as well. If you're looking for more resources, visit the resource section of the website. We've got a white paper on PCI compliance. We've got one on if you're in the mainframe space for FTP, SF, or FTP, eliminating FTP on the mainframe, as well as also some other white papers and so forth on better key management, as well as Crypto Auditor and monitoring encrypted environments. Again, I don't see any questions coming through right now. Let me see if we just have one on pricing, and that's going to be project-based, so I can forward that off to our sales team, and they will help you with that. But that's the only one that I see right now. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and end the presentation now. We'll probably follow up with you just to see if you have any questions with one of our friendly sales development folks, just to see how the webinar went. If you'd like more detailed information or more of a technical overview of the product, we can provide that for you as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great day.